All right, looks like the recording has started, so here we go. Hello, everyone. This is Rebecca Dallin, the Assistant Superintendent for Stormwater Quality here at the City of Oklahoma City. I'd like to officially welcome everyone to the June edition of our 2023 bi-monthly webinar series. Can anyone else just be surprised? Is anyone else surprised that it's already June? My goodness, I just seems like this year is flying by. So we will begin the main presentation momentarily, but I wanted to give a little bit of information to help enhance everyone's experience during today's program. In order to reduce background noise, we ask that everyone keep themselves muted during the presentation. If anyone has any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type those into chat. I will be monitoring chat for questions, and we'll have our speakers answer as many questions as we have time for today. If anyone would like to receive a certificate of attendance for today's webinar, please send me an email to request it. I will put my email address into chat right now, so that way you'll have it handy. Each of the presentations in this webinar series will be available within a week or so after the scheduled webinar date on our website under Stormwater Workshops. And the section where these webinars are posted is called the webinar series. And today's session, of course, will be the June edition. We will post a link to that website where you can find those presentations toward the end of today's program in case you haven't already found that. The 2022 series recordings are still available on YouTube, so if anyone needs a copy of those links, please email me and I'll be happy to send them to you. If anyone has any questions at this time, please feel free to type them into chat. But without further ado, I will play the very short webinar series welcome presentation.
Good afternoon and welcome to our bi-monthly Stormwater Quality webinar series. We always enjoy providing opportunities for everyone to learn how to help keep our local waterways clean. Remember, we're all downstream from someone else, so we all need to work together to protect our waterways. This year's series has several great presentations planned. You will have the opportunity to hear from some of our own stormwater quality staff as well as select guest speakers. We hope to see you for each session, so be sure to tune in. As we've briefly mentioned, each of the presentations should be available online within a week or so after the presentation is aired live. It will be posted on the workshop section of our Stormwater Quality website. We'll put a direct link to that page into chat toward the end of today's program. If you haven't signed up already, please do so now by pointing your phone's camera at the QR code for the newsletter or newsletters that you're interested in. The only way to sign up for either the construction or industrial training and education newsletters is via a direct website link or these QR codes. These options are both hidden in the email service site, GovDelivery. These two newsletters are the main way that we announce upcoming training, webinars, and workshops, so be sure to sign up. The quarterly newsletter is the third QR code, and it provides overall information about what we're up to. You can find this one on the GovDelivery website or use the QR code today. If you miss any of these codes, be sure to send Rebecca an email and she'll send you the direct website links. We also have an excellent Lunch and Learn series planned for this year, and the registration announcements will be sent through these newsletters. Some of our presentations will be live and some will be pre-recorded. We do our best to provide as much detailed, accurate information as possible while also working with the presenter's strengths and their schedule. We live and work in a beautiful community here in Oklahoma City. For more information about stormwater, what we're up to, and local regulations, be sure to visit our website.
All right, well, up next is the main presentation for today's program. Today, we're going to hear from two of our own staff from the industrial section from Stormwater Quality, Chris Stewart and Artisha Hicks. Chris has been the Stormwater Quality Industrial Section Supervisor since June of 2021. Chris has spent the last 20 years as part of the Stormwater Quality team, working in the Household Hazardous Waste and Environmental sections before taking on the role of Industrial Section Supervisor. Chris helped establish Oklahoma City's Household Hazardous Waste Collection Facility in 2003. He has a bachelor's degree in biological sciences from Oklahoma State University. Go Pokes. Chris enjoys backpacking throughout the spring, summer, and fall. And Artisha has a Bachelor of Science from Langston University in Natural Resource Management with a minor in Animal Science. She has also earned a master's degree from the University of Oklahoma in Human Relations. Gotta say, Boomer Sooner too, sorry. Even though OSU mom, sorry, couldn't read it. Okay, back to Miss Artisha. She started her professional career working for 2 years for the state of Oklahoma Human Services Department and then 8 years for the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality in the Air Quality Division. Artisha joined Oklahoma City's stormwater quality team as an environmental technician for the industrial section in December of 2021. Artisha loves cooking, baking, and reading. She loves reading cookbooks, anything fiction, as well as mysteries. And I will also attest to Artisha's baking skills. We've appreciated those a lot. So again, if anyone has any questions during today's presentation, be sure to type them into chat. Chris, go ahead and share your screen.
All right.
Turn on that share the sounds too. And begin whenever you're ready, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today. My name is Chris Stewart. I'm the Industrial Supervisor for Oklahoma City Stormwater Quality. Joining me today is Artisha Hicks, the Southeast Section Auditing and Permitting Inspector. Today, we're going to talk to you about routine site inspections and quarterly visual monitoring and how they play a key role in your stormwater program. In today's webinar, we're going to go over what stormwater is and how it relates to the industrial sectors. We'll talk about requirements regarding inspections, documentation requirements for your facilities. We'll provide you with some general guidelines, record retention requirements, and then provide you with some helpful suggestions to hopefully make this a little bit easier for you when doing your quarterly visual monitoring and your routine inspections. What is industrial stormwater? Well, let's first have an understanding of what stormwater is. Stormwater is the runoff generated from rain or snowmelt events that flow over impervious lands and surfaces. These could be streets, parking lots, rooftops, or other areas where the water is not allowed to soak into the ground. This runoff has the potential to pick up pollutants such as trash, chemicals, oils, sediments that can harm some of our waterways. In order for us to protect these resources, we're supposed to implement some stormwater controls or best business practices to help filter out or reduce these pollutants in the runoff. In the United States, facilities that discharge industrial stormwater to surface waters must obtain a permit under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System per the Clean Water Act. Thankfully, the EPA created a multi-sector general permit in 1995. This multi-sector general permit is in lieu of each individual facility or business obtaining their own permit. The permit covers 29 industrial and commercial sectors or business types. The permit provides guidance on how they should manage their facilities' industrial stormwater discharge, including inspection and other monitoring requirements. The EPA did delegate to certain states the ability to issue these permits. Most states have the same requirements as the EPA's, however, some may have additional requirements. The documentation and requirements for both the routine facility inspections and quarterly visual monitoring are fairly similar. They are required for all industries and sectors unless unstaffed and unmanned. They're required each quarter, however, some sectors require more frequent inspections. There's minimum documentation required. However, your facility or company can add information as needed. Just be sure to have the minimum required documentation per the OKR05. And then you must maintain this documentation for 3 years after your permit's expired or terminated. So make sure you keep these records with your stormwater pollution prevention plan as you will be summarizing all the recorded information in your annual comprehensive site compliance evaluation report.
Now we will go over more information about the routine facility inspections.
So what is a routine facility inspection? Well, in Part 3 of the OKR5, it goes over the routine facility inspection information. Well, that is an inspection of your facility during normal working hours where you're going to look at materials or activities that are exposed to stormwater. There'll be areas identified in your stormwater pollution prevention plan you'll need to look at. You're going to look through areas where spills or leaks have happened in the past 3 years, because as we know, if there was an issue once, unfortunately, there's a chance that the issue could happen again. You're going to look at all your discharge points or outfalls, and that's where your stormwater leaves your facilities. And you're going to want to make sure that you look at all of your control measures or BMPs you have in place to help control your stormwater or pollutants from leaving your site.
One question we receive a lot is who needs to be doing routine facility inspections? All industrial stormwater discharge permittees are required to conduct routine facility inspections. So if you have a permit with the city, the state, or a federal uh, agency, you are required to do routine facility inspections.
So why are you required to do these routine facility inspections? Well, of course, they are a part of the OKR05 permit, and you're required to do these once a quarter to make sure your stormwater pollution plan and all your best management practices are efficient and working as written or planned. However, they also provide you with the ability to find issues before they get larger. For example, during your routine inspections, you could find leaking lines or valves or leaking containers that could be cleaned up and repaired prior to them getting larger. You could also find issues with some secondary containments for bulk storage materials that, if repaired prior to any issues, could save your facility time and money. So how often do I need to do these inspections? And as I've said a few times, it's at least once per quarter, which is every 3 months, 4 times a year, you'll have to do one of these inspections. Now remember, they're to be done during your normal operating hours, so it's not like something you have to come in on the weekends or in odd hours to do so. Now your inspections are at least once per quarter, 4 per year, but you certainly can do more inspections as needed. Be sure to choose an inspection frequency that enhances your stormwater program. Larger facilities might benefit from more frequent inspections, or facilities that have more complicated operations might need to have areas looked at more often. Your stormwater pollution prevention plan will describe the process and the frequency of your inspections, so make sure you follow what you have written down in your SWIP. Now, as we said before, some sectors have specific frequency requirements. I've listed those sectors here. We have another webinar that gives a little bit more detail on those specific sectors and some of their requirements. However, you can also look in the OKR5 to verify what those sectors are required to do. And remember, at least once per calendar year, you're required to do a routine facility inspection when stormwater is discharging from your facility. What areas do you need to look at when doing your routine facility inspection? The OKR5 has a list of areas that you'll need to look at when doing these inspections. However, your company or facility can certainly add more areas as needed. Be sure at a minimum to look at areas where industrial materials or activities are exposed to stormwater, whether that's permanent work areas or perhaps temporary work areas. In your stormwater pollution prevention plan, you'll have a list of areas that are potential pollutant sources. You'll need to look at each of those. If you've had any spills in the last 3 years, you need to be sure to identify those and inspect those with each routine facility inspection. And you look at each outfall or discharge point. Be sure to check all your BMPs or control measures that you have installed in order to help reduce pollutants in your stormwater runoff, and refer to your stormwater pollution prevention plan site map, as it will have the areas or locations that need to be inspected during your routine facility inspection. So who can do the routine inspections at your facility? Well, the OKR5 identified a person as a qualified person, which I've added that definition here from the EPA, who is familiar with your activities at your facility. That person may be a member of your stormwater pollution prevention team, or you may hire a third-party person to do those inspections. Now remember, if you hire a third-party person, a member of your stormwater pollution prevention team must accompany them during these inspections. And when doing your routine inspections, be sure to identify each person doing the inspections on your sheet. The OK RO5 lists some specific items you need to look at when doing your routine facility inspections. You need to look at industrial areas, residue or trash that may or could come in contact with stormwater. You need to look for leaks or spills from equipment, drums, tanks, or other containers. You need to look at areas where tracking of materials could leave where vehicles enter or exit your facility. You'll need to check for tracking or blowing of materials from areas where stormwater normally wouldn't reach to areas where it possibly could be exposed to stormwater. You need to check sites where you might have erosion issues, such as at your outfalls or where vehicles normally drive along paths. You need to check for any unauthorized non-stormwater, or we might say illicit discharges, verifying that you don't have anything leaving your site that should not. You'll want to go ahead and assess all the BMPs listed in your stormwater pollution prevention plan and check to make sure that they are still effective in how they were designed. You'll need to identify any issues and verify whether any of the BMPs need to be replaced at that time. And you will also check to make sure your stormwater pollution prevention plan site map is still correct, as changes at the facilities could occur between inspections. And as we said before, you'll need to make sure that at least once during the calendar year, you do an inspection during a stormwater or a rainwater discharge event. And make sure that you observe all your control measures and your outfalls when doing this inspection. And any corrective actions as a result of the inspections must be completed and consistent with Part 5 of the OK RO5. So how do I properly record my routine facility inspections? Well, thankfully, the DEQ created a template form that contains all the information required in the OK RO5. You can certainly utilize your own form. Just make sure that it has at least the required information. You can certainly add more information as needed. Now, you do not submit these routine inspections form to the DEQ or Oklahoma City unless requested to do so. Please keep these copies with your stormwater pollution prevention plan. Now here you'll see a list of the required information you must have in your inspection forms. As I said, the DEQ has a nice template form that you can utilize that has all this information. However, if you choose to create your own, make sure you have every item listed here. And as I said, you can certainly add more information as needed as your company requires. If you do create your own form, don't forget to add the certification statement in accordance with Part 8.16 of the 2022 OK RO5.
Continuing with the routine facility inspection documentation, although you are not required to submit your individual inspection reports, you must summarize these reports on your annual comprehensive site compliance evaluation report. You will log the total number and each date you completed a routine inspection and answer the questions concerning your findings. Your ACER is a recap of your previous year's information. For example, Your 2023 ACER contains the information from our 2022 inspection reports. The ACER must be submitted to the OKDEQ by March 1st of that reporting year. Please do not complete your ACER until after December 31st in case an issue arises. The City of Oklahoma City does not require the ACER to be submitted, but please keep a copy of this form with your SWP3. If you have any questions on completing this form, please contact your inspector. Now let's go over the routine facility inspections report. This is DEQ's report, and let's just kind of go through this to ensure that it's being filled out correctly. So number one is just general information. It's your facility's name. Please ensure that you put down the business name. If you are located in your facilities like an OKC office, please make sure you put that down as well. The DEQ authorization number is your OKR05 number. List the date of the inspection. That's the date that you are actually completing this inspection. Please put down the start time of the inspection and make sure that you pay attention to put the end time once you have completed the inspection. The inspector's name should be the person that is actually conducting the inspection at that time. If there is more than one person conducting this inspection, please make sure that you list all people that are involved in conducting the inspection. The inspector's title and phone number is needed. So if you are, for example, Jane Smith, and you are the EHS coordinator, please make sure you put down your title and a phone number. Number two, weather and discharge information. Please make sure that you are paying attention to the weather at the time of this inspection. Some of the little areas on here, which is clear, cloudy, rain, sleet, fog, snow, high winds, or other. Just make sure you list down what the actual weather is at that time. Another thing I would like to mention is you don't have to do this when it's raining, but we would like you to conduct one event when it's raining. So for one time that you do this inspection, make sure that you do one when it is raining. Make sure that you place the correct temperature, rainfall data, and then if there is anything occurring at the time. So the next question is, are there any discharges occurring at the time of this inspection? If there is something going on and you notice something, please make sure you describe in detail what is occurring at that time. If you have any previous unidentified discharges of pollutants occurring since the last inspection, make sure that you place a yes or no there and describe the conditions that you are seeing at this time.
The DEQ template already has some areas or activities pre-filled out. However, if your facility does not have those areas, just mark NA or not applicable and move on. Please don't leave anything blank. Make sure it's either yes, no, or NA. If you find any issues, be sure to describe them in the maintenance or the corrective actions needed area, and then create a corrective action report as required. The DEQ's template also has a few blank areas, so you can add some facility-specific inspection areas you might need. The facility inspection report also contains a section where you can look over your structural control measures. When reviewing those, if you find any issues, please be as descriptive as possible to help make sure any issues are identified and repaired or replaced as needed. When looking at each of your discharge points or outfalls, make sure you're recording the information on the proper outfall ID number. If you have more than 7 outfalls, you can certainly copy this page to add additional outfall information as needed. If you find any other incidences of noncompliance not otherwise identified in this report, be sure to add them in section 6.
This is the last portion of the routine facility inspection report. Again, this is DEQ's report. So if you decide to create your own form, that is, we can do that. You can create your own form. Just please make sure that you place on that form the certification statement. Be sure that you list the name, the title, a signature, and a date to ensure that this form is correct.
And so now we'd like to give you some helpful suggestions to hopefully make it a little bit easier when doing your routine facility inspections. The first thing that we can't harp on enough is just make sure you have a well-detailed stormwater pollution prevention plan. In it, it should detail exactly when and how your routine facility inspections should occur and would occur. That way, if you have new people or rotating people doing the inspections, each person is following the same procedures. You might look at having a separate folder with the site inspection instructions in it and the forms. Just make sure if you keep the forms in that folder that that is also with your stormwater pollution prevention plan. You might look at keeping a copy of your site map as it identifies each area that must be inspected. And then perhaps you can suggest a walking route so that things aren't overlooked during an inspection. You want to train multiple employees on the different inspection procedures. That way, if anyone is out when it's their turn or a time to do an inspection, another individual can do the inspection as needed. And you'll want to create a calendar event for your inspections. That way you don't miss an inspection or forget to do one during your quarter, or if you're required to do them more often when they are required. And then you can certainly look at doing an inspection with each quarterly visual monitoring. That way you also obtain your requirement to do an inspection during stormwater discharge.
Now let's transition into the quarterly visual monitoring. We will go over more of the rules, documentation, equipment, why and how to perform this monitoring.
Okay, so what is quarterly visual monitoring? Whether it is just the observation or the monitoring of your stormwater discharges from your facility to make sure you don't have anything pollutant-wise leaving your site at any time.
Again, we usually get questions all the time, and another question that we usually get is who needs to complete quarterly visual monitorings. All industries that have a stormwater discharge or that are a stormwater discharge permittee are required to conduct quarterly visual monitorings. Saying if you have a federal, state, or city permit, you are required to conduct quarterly visual monitorings.
So like in the previous section, when we talked about the facility inspections, the why is because there was a time when we weren't very good stewards. And so we use this monitoring to make sure that our industrial stormwater discharges are as free and clear from pollutants as possible. Once again, this also provides a nice in-depth assessment of whether your stormwater pollution prevention plan and your best management practices are effective.
If you are interested in more information regarding quarterly visual monitoring, this information can be found in Part 4 of the OKRO5. The frequency of the quarterly visual monitoring is quarterly. This means that there are 4 quarters that you are required to ensure that you get your samples taken and your sheets completed. So for the first quarter, that is January 1st through March 31st. The second quarter is April 1st through June 30th. Third quarter is July 1st through September 30th. And the fourth quarter is October 1st through December 31st. There are some exemptions to this that we will talk about a little later in this presentation.
Now, if you obtain your permit in between quarters, for example, September 2nd, You will have to start your quarterly visual monitoring the next quarter, that October 1st through December 31st cycle.
Now let's talk about where you grab your samples. Samples are collected at your outfalls. This means where any water leaves or where the stormwater leaves your facility. Um, we spoke about earlier that there are some exemptions. One of those exemptions is substantially identical outfalls. If you have substantially identical outfalls, you can rotate your monitoring each quarter of each outfall. Um, the information that you use from one outfall needs to be placed on both. Uh, I'm going to say here before I go into more detail on that, please be sure if you are using substantially identical outfalls that you list on your form and make sure you document which outfall you are sampling from. So to go into that a little bit more, for example, if you have two outfalls, outfalls 1 and 2, and they are essentially the same, they are considered a substantially identical outfall. What you would do is you would take the sample from outfall 1, you would still document on your paperwork, so you would have two separate sheets for this, outfall 1 and outfall 2. When you document that, you're documenting what you found in outfall 1 and you're listing that in outfall 2. Uh, the following quarter, when you do your monitoring again, you're going to take that sample from outfall 2 and do the same thing vice versa as you did the previous quarter. You're going to list that information on your forms stating that you took this sample from outfall 2 and that you have a substantial identical outfall. That is listed on that form, so please make sure that you mark that you're sampling from a substantially identical outfall and that you're documenting the results on both forms and where you took that information from.
Now, a very important question you can ask is, how do I find my outfalls? Well, first of all, your outfalls are going to be listed on your notice of intent and in your stormwater pollution prevention plan. An outfall refers to the area where stormwater discharges are leaving from your facility. You could have one outfall or you could have multiple outfalls. You could have one specific flume or channel that they go out, or you could have sheet outfall if you have a larger flat area where it leaves your site. If you're at a new facility, you want to be sure to do an inspection during a rain event to make sure you've identified all your outfalls. And all your outfalls will be identified on your facility's site map. Make sure when you're numbering your outfalls, you use a sequential number, for example, 001, 002, 003. And remember, each outfall will be monitored every quarter. You won't just do one outfall per quarter. Here we've provided you an example site map that shows you the flow of stormwater and the outfalls in which they discharge. As you can see, each outfall will have to be sampled each quarter. However, if outfall 1 and outfall 2 were substantially identical outfalls, then those outfalls could be sampled every other quarter, rotating which outfall you sample per quarter. Just make sure you identify on your quarterly visual monitoring report which outfall was sampled for that quarter.
Now let's go over some of the representative outfalls, aka substantially identical effluents. Here we have provided some detailed information regarding substantially identical outfalls. If you watch this presentation at a later date, you might want to pause it now to read this information. For those of you that are watching this live, please read fast.
An important question to understand is, when can you take a quarterly visual monitoring sample? It has to be done after a measurable storm event. In the case of snow melt, the monitoring must be performed at a time when a measurable discharge occurs at your facility. It should be done during normal business hours, and then certainly when it's safe to do so. What did I mean by a measurable storm event? In the OKRO5, it describes a measurable storm event as a rainfall event where at least a tenth of an inch of rain falls, and it must have been at least 72 hours since the previous measurable storm event, which means it must be 3 days since the last tenth of an inch of rain. And remember, ice and snowmelt qualifies as a measurable storm event. However, you must collect the first flush, and it should be on the first day of melt runoff only.
Okay, so let's talk about some bad weather here. We live in Oklahoma and we get some pretty severe weather. So, as we spoke about earlier, there are some exemptions. If it is like raining, please go out and get your sample. But if we have some severe weather, such as lightning storms, thunder, tornadoes, hail, be safe. We want you guys to be as safe as possible. You can make up this event if it is severe weather. Use caution. Make sure you have all of your supplies that you need. If it is extremely bad weather, do not go out there. Adverse weather does not exempt you from having to file your EDMR. So please make sure that you make this up on another rain event. And on your form, there is a spot on there that states this is a makeup. That's where you would actually list that this is a makeup for that rain event due to severe weather. Now, if you try to do it that day, please make sure you still fill out that form and just write on there why you were not able to collect on that day, that there was severe weather. And when you are refilling out the form for the event that you are now collecting for, just make sure you put on there that this is a makeup for the previous one that you were not able to collect.
The quarterly visual monitoring procedures are fairly straightforward. The EPA, the DEQ, and the City of Oklahoma City all have guidance documents to help you with this procedure. You should do this during daylight hours. The sample should be collected in a clean, colorless glass or plastic container and examined in a well-lit area as soon as possible, but no later than 60 minutes after the sample has been taken. There are a few exceptions, for example, if your facility has automatic or passive samplers. You should do the monitoring on a sample collected within the first 30 minutes of the actual discharge of the storm event, and if it's not possible, you must document why it wasn't possible to do the examination and collect the sample within the first 30 minutes. And this should be done on a measurable storm event, as we mentioned previously. Here we provide some ideas for equipment you could use when doing your quarterly visual monitoring. We suggest you gather this equipment prior to each event to make sure all your monitorings are as successful as possible. Be sure to wear the proper PPE and have good clean containers prior to each quarterly visual monitoring event. Make sure the equipment you need is sufficient for your facility's needs, as each site or each outfall could be different and require different sampling equipment.
Now let's go over some of the quarterly visual monitoring requirements. Table 4.1 of the OK RO5 lists the parameters for your QVMs and provides a method and some expected results for each. The DEQ's template has this information on it. The City of Oklahoma City's multiple outfall forms does not have all of the information provided on this table. So please be mindful when using this that you may want to refer back to table 4.1 to ensure that you have all of the information. If you create your own form, you might consider adding all of this information to make it easier to complete your monitoring. When you're conducting your quarterly visual monitoring requirements, please make sure that if you do find an issue that you complete a corrective action form. Once you've completed the form, please make sure you place a copy of this report in your SWP3.
The quarterly visual monitoring documentation is fairly similar to your routine inspection documentation. You can utilize the DEQ's template form, which has all the information required. The City of Oklahoma City's multiple outfall form could also be used, or you can create your own. Just make sure you have all the documentation and all the requirements listed in the OKR5. You certainly can add more information as your facility or your company might require. And remember, you aren't to turn in any of this information to the DEQ or to the City of Oklahoma City unless requested. However, you will summarize all your monitoring at the end of the year when filling out your ACER report. And any corrective actions for issues found during your quarterly visual monitoring must be performed in consistence with Part 5 of the OKR05. Now we'll go over the ODEQ's template for the quarterly visual monitoring report. This will be covered in 2 slides, however the report is in 1 page.
The first line of this form is the facility name. Please make sure that you place the name of the facility in this box. The next section is where DEQ's authorization number. This is your OKR05 number. Please list it there. On this page, the next box is for outfalls ID. You will list your outfall as 001, 002, and continue on as accordingly. Please make sure that you complete a separate form for each outfall that you have. The next box is for substantially identical outfalls. Please list whether you are collecting for one outfall or more on this section. The next box is the date and time the discharge began. Please be sure to pay attention that you are writing the correct date and time of when you begin to collect your discharge. The next box states date and time of the sample collected. At this point, you are putting the date and the time that you actually collected the sample, not the same time that the discharge began. The next box is the date and time the sample is examined. This should be done after you wait for the 60 minutes to allow the sample to sit. The next box is for substitute samples. Here is where you would put if you did your sample and there was a rainstorm so you couldn't collect at that time. This is where if you're redoing this, you're putting your mark here as to yes or no, you've collected for the substitute sample. The next box states for the person's name and title collecting the sample. If there is more than one person doing this at the time, please list the name of each person and their title in this box. The next box is the person's name and title that's examining the sample. Please make sure you put all of the people that are included in this at this point in time. The next box is the nature of discharge. Please make sure that you place the amount of rainfall collected and if this is a collection for snowmelt or not. This slide just is a continuation and shows the remainder part of the form for the quarterly visual monitoring report. This is DEQ's form, so it shows you the information that's listed on table 4.1. If you use the City of Oklahoma City's form, please make sure that you refer back to table 4.1 to ensure that you have all of the information. If you decide to make your own form, please make sure that you have all of the information listed from table 4.1. You need to also remember that if you do create your own form, that you place the information that shows that you certify that this form is correct and that you make sure that you have the name, signature, title, and date of the person that is completing the form. This form is the City of Oklahoma City's form that shows multiple outfalls. When using this form, please make sure you refer back to table 4.1 to ensure that you have all of the documentation needed. When completing your quarterly visual monitoring report, if you are not able to collect within the first 30 minutes, please make sure that somewhere on the form you document why you were not able to collect. Here are some helpful suggestions. Have a well-detailed stormwater prevention plan. Having this allows you to make sure that all of your documentation is completed in a timely manner. Train multiple employees on the QVM procedures. You should always have more than one person trained. There is no excuse for your quarterly visual monitorings to not be completed in a timely manner. Create a calendar event for the last working day of the month. If you have no qualifying rain event, write up a note and insert it in your SWP3 book and plan to make a makeup for that. Create a QVM kit ready and labeled before any event. This way you're ready to get out there and get your samples completed and collected and completed in a timely fashion. The only way that this works is if you work together with others in your facility to ensure that you have all of your information and documentation completed. And your stormwater prevention plan should list that and have that available so that if anyone picks up this book, they should be able to go out and complete this task.
A reoccurring concern we hear from our permittees is about properly documenting issues found while doing their routine site inspections or the quarterly visual monitoring. And I can assure you, we understand not everything at a facility goes as planned. So proper documentation shows us that you're taking your stormwater program seriously. Plus, it can help fix any issues before they get larger and has documentation showing that you have corrected them. Thank you, and we appreciate you listening to our webinar today. For more information, you can certainly visit the websites on this slide. You can email myself, or you can contact your stormwater inspector. We're here to help you have a successful stormwater program. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chris and Artisha. What a great presentation. So very interesting too. If anyone has any questions, please be sure to type them into chat at this time. I did not see any questions yet, but we will be here for a couple more minutes so we can answer any questions that anyone would like to type in there. As a reminder, if anyone would like to receive a certificate of attendance for today's presentation, please do send me an email to request it. We ask that you don't request those certificates in chat because we may not have your email address associated to your username on Teams. I should be able to get those certificates out hopefully today, but hopefully if not today, then certainly soon in the next few days. As we've mentioned, a recording of today's presentation should be available on our website in the next few days. And so I will put that website link into chat for you now. And thank you all for attending today's session. We hope everyone enjoyed this presentation and that everyone is continuing to enjoy our webinar series. We hope to see you again on August 10th for the next installment of our bi-monthly webinar series. Have a great afternoon.